For the week 4 activity, we're creating a 3-on-1 image composition where we take 3 images, which we crop to a constrained 1:1 proportion, and place them on top of a background image. The first step is to have 3 images chosen, which you open in Photoshop. Let's begin with this image, and we're going to begin with cropping it. The crop tool is located in the toolbar on the left-hand side, and it's the 5th tool down. If you're not sure which tool to use, you can always hover over the tools until you find the name of the tool that you're looking for. You can also click on the caret next to the bottom right of the tool, which is that little triangle. The little triangle will show you all of the nested tools that are beneath the one that you see on the toolbar. In this case, I want the crop tool, so I'm going to click on the first top tool on that list. Now, whenever you click on a tool, there's corresponding parameters up here in your options toolbar. This allows you to set and personalize whatever it is that you want to accomplish with that particular tool. Let's begin by showing you how to create an unconstrained crop. Unconstrained means that there is no ratio already set. There's no constraints. And you can do that by making sure that you have ratio selected and that you have nothing in these 2 boxes here. If you have a number, just double click on clear. This is going to allow you to change the aspect ratio and just do it freehand. So if I wanted to, I could crop it this way just by clicking on and dropping from the corners and the transform controls. The transform controls are anything from the corners and the middles of each area of your composition. So here I've done a freehand, unconstrained crop. But for the requirements of this assignment, I actually want to have a specific ratio. Let's go back up to my options toolbar and change the ratio to a 1:1 square. I'm going to go ahead and click on 1:1 square. And then over here, on within, you'll notice I've got the 1:1 in my 2 little dialog boxes here. I could also click on this button here. I'd like everybody to take a look at the overlay options here. This button looks kind of like an over-exaggerated hashtag. So click on the down caret and you'll notice that the different options that are available to you allow you to change it. So here the rule of thirds is selected and always show overlay. The reason why I like rule of thirds is rule of thirds are these hairlines, and whenever you're cropping something, if you don't want to crop everything at the center of an image, that can be kind of boring. But if you crop it using the rule of thirds, you place important elements of an image composition at those crosshairs. So if I put something interesting here, or here, or here, or here, at any one of these crosshairs, I create an interesting and dynamic composition. The other thing is the overlay, which is checked, are these lines, so that whenever I'm working in crop, I like to see those lines. If you wanted them to disappear, you could uncheck that. But until you get used to using the rule of thirds, it's a handy little tool to have available. Let's go ahead and crop this using the rule of thirds with a 1:1 ratio. Now I can do that again just by using the transform controls in the corners. And I can open and close it on either side, in any corner really. If I use the top and bottom, it's not going to squish, it's going to actually change the crop from all angles. Now one thing I do want to point out is that you'll notice that my crop, while I'm cropping, my cursor changes from the black triangle to the corner one where it's diagonal with 2 triangles on either side, and that bendy one. Now watch what happens when I click within my image with the black triangle. You'll notice that when I click and move, it's not the crop that moves, but rather the image beneath the crop. Now if I wanted to, and I wanted to kind of work with the idea of creating a cropped image where I have the interesting elements at one of the crosshairs, this kind of works for me. Not only do I have the bird's eye here, but it's a flamenco, and the legs are also at this crosshair. You don't always get to do that, but this is a nice option to create that nice rule of thirds cropping. Now at the same time, you'll notice that I can extend this. So I can go larger and smaller using this tool, how it changes from the triangle to the 2-ended diagonal line. And then there's this bendy. Now you can also change the angle of your crop if this is what you wanted to do. Now, if at any time you do something that you don't like, you can always undo it by doing a Control-Z or Command-Z if you're on a Mac. Now, let's say I'm happy with this crop. I could go ahead and hit Enter and keep that crop. Or I could click on this check mark here, which tells Photoshop to commit to the crop that I've just done. Now let's say I've made a mistake and I want to go back and make my changes. Photoshop allows me to do that from within my History panel. Up here on the right hand side, there is this little icon at the very top, and it's your History panel. If you click on this, it'll allow you to see the history of the number of things that you've done. In this case, here's my original image, and here is the crop. I can go back to my original image, or I can go back to the layer of the crop. Let's say I wanted to go back to the original image and I wanted to change my proportions. In this case, let's say I wanted to change it from a 1:1 to a 4:5. Now the nice thing about Photoshop is when you have a proportion that's different on one side to the other, it allows you to swap just by clicking on this button here. So let's say I wanted it to be horizontal as opposed to vertical. I could just click on that to swap back and forth. Now, I'm going to accept this just to show you how to go back and forth, and I'm going to click Enter. Now, I do want to go back to that 1:1 ratio, so I'm going to return to my history, return to the original image, click on a 1:1 ratio, recenter, recrop it so that it's on a nice rule of thirds crop, click Enter, and then I'm all set. One final thing I want to show you before we save this is how to flip the image. If I wanted the bird's orientation to be the other way around, I could do that quite easily by clicking on Image, Image Rotation, Flip Canvas Horizontal. Now I have the image looking in the other direction. When I'm ready to save the image, I can go File, Save As. I want to change this to a Photoshop image, and I want to save this in a location that makes it easy to find. I happen to have created a folder in my sample images called Week 4 Activities. So I'm going to go ahead and save it within this folder. And I'm going to call this one Flamingo. I'm going to say Save. Now I need to repeat this process with these two other images here. Now you'll notice one more thing before we finish, is that every time you have the crop tool open for one document, it's also going to be the tool that's open for the next document. In this case, you'll notice that there are crop lines available already on this document while I'm working. This can be distracting if you don't want to necessarily work on the crop tool. So if you aren't working on the crop tool and you have multiple documents open, I always recommend that you click on the Move tool until you know what it is that you want to accomplish on each layer. Go ahead and continue this with the other two images for your 3:1 image composition, and then we'll work on the next step, which is creating a composite.